I am Clara Mason, a 28-year-old woman living in Harbor City. My world is a strange blend of ambition and heartache, shaped by the toxic family dynamics that have always been a part of my life. I am the invisible one, the one who existed in the shadows of my brother, a favored son who could do no wrong in the eyes of my parents. I can still remember the day I realized that my worth was measured against his successes. If I earned a B, it was met with scorn, while if he flunked a class, he received congratulations for his efforts. With every year, the gap between us widened, carving out a canyon of resentment and bitterness in my heart. I sought therapy to confront my feelings, but healing felt like an uphill climb without an end in sight. The holidays became the highlight of my family's awful hierarchy, where my brother's accomplishments further cemented the bias. I would sit quietly during family dinners while my brother took the spotlight, receiving applause for simply existing. I began to feel like a side character in a story that only centered on him. As I watched our parents dote on him, I started to resent not only him, but the very fabric of our family. My life felt increasingly stagnant and unfair, like a ship anchored in stormy waters with no sight of land. Then came the day that would flip my world upside down. While scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a trend that sparked a dark curiosity. People were faking terminal illnesses to test their family's loyalties. What if I could do that? My heart raced as I considered the possibilities. This could be the key to unlocking my family's true feelings about me. When those poisonous words stung me in a text message, calling me worthless and a burden, I decided to act. I spent days crafting the script in my mind, rehearsing my lines like an actor preparing for an emotional role. I convinced myself that it was merely a performance, a way to showcase the emotional neglect I had endured for years. That fateful night at dinner, I sat across from my family, my brother's smug smile shining like a beacon of everything I loathed. Then, I unleashed my fabricated revelation. I announced in a trembling voice that I had been diagnosed with cancer. As the shocked expressions flashed across their faces, I felt a wild sense of empowerment. But that feeling was short-lived. Their reactions were lukewarm at best, like a conductor yielding a feeble wave to an audience that held no interest in the performance. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, barely masking the disinterest in their eyes. They quickly shifted the conversation back to my brother's recent promotion at our grandpa's company, completely disregarding the emotional bomb I had just dropped. I boiled over at their lack of concern. "Are you serious?" I shouted, anger propelling my words like arrows. I had just laid my heart bare, and all they could offer was apathy. My father's hand came up, and in a flash, I felt a sharp slap across my cheek. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. Something snapped inside of me, and I was filled with a burning rage. I hurled my fist toward him, landing blows with surprising force. My knuckles made contact with his nose first, then his stomach, and finally his jaw. The shock of my actions sent me reeling as I stormed away from the table, leaving behind my family in stunned silence. As I walked out, I flipped them off, determination burning fiercely in my chest. In the car ride home, my girlfriend sat beside me, a mere spectator to my storm of emotions. The silence was suffocating. I could not bear to look at her. I had acted out, and the chaos of anger and adrenaline had left me even more distraught. She reached out to beg me to talk about what had just happened, but I locked myself away behind walls of fury and hurt. I just wanted to be alone, to drown my thoughts in a haze of alcohol that momentarily blurred the reality I had created. I stumbled to the pantry and grabbed an entire bottle of beer, drinking it mindlessly while the darkness began to drift me into uneasy sleep. The night was fractured, and I woke in the early hours only to find my girlfriend's phone lit up with messages. I squinted at the screen, reading the words that made my heart plummet into an abyss of betrayal. It was an exchange between her and my brother. They were plotting to steal my money and run away together. My hands trembled as fury morphed into sadness. My heart felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. I awoke her from her sleep in a fit of anger, telling her that we were done, that she would need to pack her things immediately. She could not comprehend what was happening but hastily complied, packing her belongings into trash bags as if she were merely a guest being kicked out of a house. I watched as she left the house at 3 in the morning, a deep sense of loss washing over me. Days passed, and when I finally surfaced from the haze of my decisions, I found 50 missed calls and 100 text messages lighting up my voicemail. My family was cutting me off, stripping me from their will like I was nothing but a waste of space. I typed back a simple response. I do not give a F. They had no clue that I was the one managing their finances, manipulating a web of financial affairs that was about to be unraveled at my fingertips. The moment I learned about my brother's betrayal, I knew it was my time to act. I gathered evidence, meticulously documenting all the times my brother had pocketed funds from my grandfather's company. He may have thought he held the power, but I would turn the tables on him. I stood at the precipice of revenge, ready to dive in head first. Using my access to the family's financial records, I hid all payments, fees, and dues from my relatives. The moment I reported him to the company was the moment I felt the thrill of vengeance course through my veins. My brother was fired, caught in the web of deceit he had spun himself. And just like that, he found himself behind bars, his dreams crumbling like ashes before me. Meanwhile, my family found themselves evicted from the comfortable home they had known, tossed into the chaos of a cramped apartment where they struggled daily to make ends meet. Irony wrapped around them like a thick fog. They never once thought about the consequences of their actions and how their treatment of me would come back to haunt them. It was futile to even consider offering them pity. They had discarded their own daughter for far too long. I relished the sight of how quickly their arrogance turned to desperation. The world spun, and as I navigated through my life's new chapter, I found peace. The thrill of their downfall healed parts of me that I had long thought broken. I no longer held resentment. Instead, I embraced a sense of empowerment. The chains of my family's dysfunction finally shattered. I had taken back my narrative, from being the envious sister to becoming the strong woman who sought justice for herself. Months flew by, and I settled into a routine of newfound strength. My life had transformed in small yet profound ways. I started volunteer work at local shelters and engaged in community outreach, surrounding myself with people who valued my worth. Each week, I felt more connected to my own life, building honest relationships with people who accepted me for my true self. But the cherry on top was the irony that became my mystery. One evening, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Intrigued and apprehensive, I answered. On the other end was an old friend of my brother's, one who still lived in Harbor City. He told me about how my brother had turned his back on all those who once supported him. That small thrill returned when the call ended, as I realized that my actions had sparked ripple effects beyond my understanding. My brother's missing days of prosperity had evolved into the weariness of losing friends, and my family's greed had torn them apart. In the space where there once was bitterness, there was now a lightness that expressed sympathy for a brother I had once resented. I continued to thrive, embracing the life I had fought for while collecting the pieces of my past like trophies along the way. Eventually, I decided to reach out to my parents, not to reignite old flames for reconciliation, but to hold them accountable. In a long letter, I detailed their negligence and shared the truth about how my trajectory in life had been shaped by their dismissiveness. I expressed my hope that they might understand how they had pushed me into darkness. My heart raced as I imagined their faces reading my words, perhaps feeling a glimmer of guilt. As I licked the envelope to seal my thoughts, I smiled to myself, empowered in ways they would never know. Now, can you see how life can change with one act of courage? I had fought my battle, not only winning my self-respect, but also liberating myself from the chains of expectation. My heart knew no bounds of revenge. It instead embraced enlightenment. Would I take their calls in the future? Perhaps. For now, I had found something far more precious. A life where I dictated the terms, and for the first time, I was just Clara Mason, standing tall and unbroken in the sunlight of my own making.